So, it's been a little while. I guess the question is, what have I been up to? Well, I'm still reading. I'm actually just about finished with the Hunger Games books. I'm about 70% done with the second to last book. I may have changed my mind about doing a review video for the series, by the way, because I've had quite a bit of fun with it. That's not what I'm talking about today, though. I'm wanting to talk about the other thing that I've been doing, which is writing. I used to write a lot when I was in school, and for years afterwards I did it as a hobby for online roleplay stuff, but it's been a while since I wrote anything before I picked it back up recently. It started with me wanting to write out a spooky scenario about a vampire attack that I've had for a little bit up here in my head, but it kind of blossomed out into more. I found myself building a world and characters. Every day I think of more and more stuff to put into this world, and I think of different ways about how I see vampires. The thing is, though, that in writing this stuff, I started to think about what we really set out to accomplish when we write. Are we just telling stories? Sometimes, but I find that most of the time, when something is good, the author is actually trying to say something more. They have some kind of meaning or message woven in with the narrative. So I had to think about what I wanted to say. What was my point? What do I actually want to talk about beyond the vampires? Well, that led me to thinking about myself. As I said back in one of my Twilight videos, I found myself identifying with Edward over how he described vampires, the way they inherently make humans uncomfortable, and his view of himself as a monster because of that. I also mentioned briefly that I felt that Twilight vampires exist outside of fate or destiny, as they are beings that should not exist. They should be dead, but they aren't. In thinking about myself and putting into words things I never said but always felt, I realized some things about how I see myself and my place in the world. So, in this video, I'm going to get into that, and it's probably going to get a little sad and deep, but after that I'll explain why it really isn't. So, let's get to it. I really want to use the main character of my story and the events to put it out there how I see myself. The character himself isn't a self-insert for me, but he will express a lot of these ideas and try to work through them himself to get to the same ultimate conclusion that I have. To really explain my vision, though, I have to tell you a bit about myself. When I was born, I was not in good shape at all. I weighed just a little over 2 pounds. My lungs didn't work on their own, and my heart wasn't so great either. I had to be hooked up to machines for months to keep me going. I have a large scar that goes from close to the front of my chest all the way around into my back from the heart stuff. I have dents in my side from the tubes stuck into me to inflate my lungs. I had so many IVs in my arms that the crook of my arms are now full of scar tissue to the point that doctors can't draw blood from there. On top of that, my parents were told I'd be severely special needs, to the point that I would need a caregiver for the rest of my life, and I'd never be able to read or write or really do anything on my own. Obviously, they were wrong about that, but that aside, I don't think it's much of a stretch to say that I probably shouldn't be here. I've always had this thought, but it wasn't until I started thinking about my writing that I started to draw lines between this and other things I've thought. The whole picture of my view of my life started to crystallize and make sense more than it had before. What before felt like sad self-pity started to add up. So, here it is. I've never felt like I had a place in this world, and I still don't to this day feel that there's any place meant for me. If you're one of the few that really know me, I've probably told you that the song Go the Distance from Disney's Hercules means a lot to me. I'm no singer, but I'll read some of the lyrics here. I have often dreamed of a far-off place, where a great warm welcome will be waiting for me, where the crowds will cheer when they see my face, and a voice keeps saying, this is where I'm meant to be. I will find my way, I can go the distance. I'll be there someday if I can be strong. I know every mile will be worth my while. I would go most anywhere to feel like I belong. The song is obviously about finding where you belong, with people that complete you. That's something I'd hope for in my more hopeful moments, but I don't actually think there is a place where I belong. I mean that in all aspects in life, from socially, romantically, and any other way you want to take it. I'm no religious man by any means, but I do think that the universe is more complicated than some would like to think. That even if it isn't a god or a structure born from a book in the desert, that there is a purpose and something beyond the rational. I believe there is a place for most people and a person for most people. The way I see myself in the world, though, is that I am one of the few that doesn't fit. I'm a broken toy that was supposed to go off the assembly line into the garbage, but I somehow slipped out onto the market, and as such there was no place for me, and there was no other half made for me. I am continuously wedging myself into places not meant to account for me, and that bothers and unsettles people who are in their place or heading there. I can look all I want, but there is no place made for me. I am alone and unable to forge the lifelong connections that others have because I wasn't in the plans for anyone else's life. Now, before anyone watching this starts to worry, let me just say this. Just because I don't think I was meant to be here doesn't mean that I don't want to be here. I will go into that final sleep one day kicking and screaming. If I were to go early, I would want it to mean something, not to be a selfish bit of self-harm. Life is precious. In my estimation, to willingly give it up for no good spits in the face of every person that fought and failed to keep theirs. Now, I know this all sounds horribly depressing, and it is to a certain extent, but now we're to the part where I asked myself, what do I do? How do I handle this? Like I said, I think I'm one of a few, but I never said I was the only one. I am in no way that uniquely special to be a lone cosmic oddity. I think the answer is that if there isn't a space made for you, then you make one yourself. Even if that makes people that are on their path or in their place already uncomfortable. You find other people that don't have a place or don't like the one meant for them, and you bring them into the fold. You might not be made to fit together easily like puzzle pieces into the grand picture of the world, but with a little effort and finagling, you can make it work and create your own little picture to the side. This is what I want to get across in my story using vampires. I'm taking my personal interpretation of vampires away from Twilight and building out my message, my world, and my story. I feel like vampires are the perfect kind of characters to express my view through. Down below, I'm going to include a link to part of what I've already written out. There's more written out, but it's probably going to go into the trash because it was a first draft before I really had any idea what I was doing. Names are changed, characters are changed. It's not really the same anymore. One thing to keep in mind about the bit that's already written, though, that I'm going to share, is that this was the initial concept of just a spooky little vampire story. I've tried to sprinkle some stuff in there to make it tie to the overall theme, but that wasn't originally what it was in my head. And the other thing to keep in mind is that this is meant to be a story within a story. This is a character, Donna, telling her first experience with a vampire to the main character when they're trapped in a cave. So this story is her story, but in the setup for it, there's references to things that have happened, but you've not read because I've not written them yet. But I think that the characters explain them well enough in a way that you will be able to understand what they're talking about. That you won't be left scratching your head. You'll know that this is something that must have happened in an earlier encounter between these characters. It took me a while to do this, but I really like the way it turned out so far. I'm not entirely sure when I'm going to get back to writing. It'll probably be soon, but I wouldn't put money on it because I've got some books to finish reading. And speaking of books, like I said earlier, I am almost done with the Hunger Games series, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to do a video on the entire series. I actually think I've had more fun reading these books than I did Twilight, and that's no shade on Twilight or anything. I still love Twilight. It's just these books are pretty breezy in comparison and easy to get through. After that, though, I'm not sure where I'm going to go as far as books. I think after I do the Hunger Games video, I might get into the Deathcast books because I was really excited to start reading those before I dived into the Hunger Games. So those will probably be next on my reading list. And I imagine that in the coming months I'll be doing a lot of reading because it's going to get cold and I won't be able to go outside and do things anymore. Especially when my work hours change to accommodate for the winter and I get to leave work an hour earlier. So I'll be at home and I won't be as sleepy as I usually am once I get home. So that'll lead to more reading, and hopefully I will be able to do more content on this channel. But until then, I guess that's it. I hope that my message about myself today doesn't depress anyone. I think ultimately my view is a pretty hopeful one. I think without the last part of making your own place, it comes across as depressing. But once you realize that you don't have to have a place made for you, I think it's an alright view of the world. And so, with that said, I'll see you again another night. Have a good one.